Okay, now, in my last Walking Dead video over a year ago, I stated that I'd be making a couple more videos about the Telltale Walking Dead games, going into lore-related stuff and going more in-depth with these reviews. And, because it's the first part in the series, I have to explain a couple of things. Number 1, I'm using the definitive edition of The Walking Dead, so if it looks off, that's why. Number 2, there are 4 topics that I'll primarily cover in the series. 1 being gameplay, 2 being the story, 3 being the actual review part, and number 4 being some other details. Obviously, there are spoilers, and lastly, this is my opinion, so like normal, don't get mad at all the choices I talk about. Personally, I want the series to be more of a retrospective / pyrocynical game review, and that means that these videos will take time, so expect a week to 2 week time for videos to come out. The Walking Dead game is a video game published by Telltale Games on April 24th, 2012, based on the show and comics with the same name. As far as I know, this game is where Telltale really found success. They made other games before this, like a Wallace and Gromit game, but Sam & Max was probably their most popular game before The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead Season 1 made around $40 million in revenue, and for a good reason. The Walking Dead is a fun, well-written game. With its 5 episodes plus 1 extra, I'll get to that later, this game makes for a fun, emotional, and interactive story. Without further ado, let's start, shall we? You start the game off in a cop car. You are Lee Everett and you've been arrested for murder and are now being taken to prison. This is a great way to start the series, showing little to nothing about this world and having you figure out what's happening with it in Lee's shoes. Anyways, after talking with the officer, you hit a man standing in the road. You crash down a hill in the car and get knocked out, hearing screams of the officer. When you come to, your leg is badly injured, but you still get out of the car and go check on the officer laying on the ground. You take the keys to unlock your handcuffs. You then drop the keys, and the second time you pick them up, it's a lot more scary, which makes sense. Wouldn't you be scared if you dropped something in front of a man who seemingly died from a random reason? You hear him breathing and he attacks you. You shoot him in the head with a shotgun, not knowing what happened to him, just knowing that he wasn't himself. People who look similar to the officer that have injuries no man could survive come out of the woods and chase after you until you hop a fence and get inside a house. While inside, you find out a family lived inside the house, and a little girl's parents are in Savannah, Georgia. When you play an audio message on a phone, not a cell phone, you hear her mother, and I'm just going to let this play for you.
Hey, Sandra, this is Diana. We're still in Savannah. Ed had a little incident with some crazy guy near the hotel, so we had to get him back to the ER and have it checked out. Anyway, he's not feeling well enough to drive back tonight, so we're staying an extra day. Thanks so much for looking after Clementine, and I promise we'll be back in time before your spring break.
Message 2, left at 11:19 p.m.
Oh my God, finally. I don't know if you tried to reach us. All the calls are getting dropped. They're not letting us leave and aren't telling us anything about Atlanta. Please, just leave the city and take Clementine with you back to Murrieta. I've got to get back to the hospital. Please let me know that you're safe.
Message 3, left at 6:51 a.m.
Clementine, baby. If you can hear this, call the police. That's 911. We love you. We love you. We love you.
This is one of my favorite parts of the game. The progression from being concerned to terrified is absolutely perfect. You hear a girl from a walkie-talkie. Her name is Clementine and you are in her house. She's 8 years old and had a babysitter taken care of. Speaking of the babysitter, you get attacked by the babysitter and have to kill her. From now on, I'm just going to call the people who aren't themselves walkers to stay in the canon and save time. With Clementine, you choose to either stay until it gets dark or leave and find help now. It doesn't matter what you choose because there aren't too many consequences from this. You find Sean Green and he takes you to a farm where you meet Herschel Green. This brings up a good time to mention something. Now, this takes place in the same time as the comics, which means that you meet some comic book characters like Glenn and Herschel. And if you look at another concept art, you see that Telltale was probably planning on you meeting Rick Grimes, which would have been cool to see, but that doesn't go anywhere besides cameos from Glenn and Herschel. So back to the story. When you get to the farm, Herschel doesn't seem to trust you, even if you are being honest with him. but he lets you stay the night after cleaning your leg up. When you wake up, you meet Kenny, Duck, and Katja, a family from Fort Lauderdale. After doing some chores and talking to people, something goes terribly wrong. Sean and Duck get attacked. Whether you choose to save Duck or Sean, Sean still dies, and you leave the farm with Kenny and his family, headed to Macon. In Macon, Kenny's truck runs out of gas and you're forced to go on foot. You see someone that looks like they're scavenging, but it's a trap, and you get attacked by walkers. You get saved by a group trying to get to the pharmacy of a drugstore, which is owned by her parents, oddly enough. In the store, you meet Glenn, Carly, Doug, Lily, and Larry accuses Duck of being bitten. An argument breaks out and Clem gets attacked by a walker. Carly, with her gun, saves Clem. Larry has a heart attack and needs nitroglycerin pills, which are used to treat episodes of chest pain in people who have heart disease. So not fun stuff. Your main quest now until the end of the episode is about getting pills for the racist D-bag Larry. We are now going to run through the main points of what happens in the next 30-minute long quest. Glenn goes to a motel to get gas for Kenny's truck, but gets in trouble and you have to go save him with Carly. Also, she knows who you are and what you did, so that's not good. Anyways, Glenn wants to save a woman who's trapped in a room in the motel, so you go there to rescue her and find out she's been bitten. A whole thing breaks out about putting her out of her misery, but long story short, she kills herself. You head back and go get the pills for Larry after killing your brother who turned into a walker and has the keys for the pharmacy. When you step into the pharmacy, an alarm goes off and alerts all walkers to your area. Now you are given the choice to save Doug or Carly. I did heads or tails for him, meaning I chose Doug, but either way you get to see a brutal death. When you're about to leave, Larry punches you in the face, hinting he knows that you are a killer. You're about to get killed, but Kenny, the absolute G, saves your life. When you get to the motel, things seem calm. You have a chance to regroup and chat with everyone, and Glenn decides that he needs to leave for Atlanta, while the rest of you decide to fortify the motel, and boom, episode 1 is complete. Overall, episode 1 is iconic and sets up the rest of the story for the game to follow. My only problem with it is that it gets kind of boring when you hit the drugstore portion, but otherwise, it's about 8.5 out of 10 for me. Three months after episode 1, you were hunting with a man named Mark, a person from an airfield who had food. Now is a good time to mention that episode 2 mainly focuses on starvation, which is brought up by the title of the episode, Starved for Help. Anyways, while talking with Mark, you and him bring up the fact that Lily and Kenny always fight and argue, as well as your problem with Larry. After failing to shoot a bird, you hear a man screaming and head towards it. You find out what it is. You meet 3 guys, Ben, Travis, and their professor, David. David has his leg in a bear trap and wants you to get him out of it. Walkers show up and they put you on a timer. If you fail to chop David's leg off, Travis goes for Mark's gun and gets himself shot, forcing you to take Travis back to the motorhome with Ben, leaving David behind. If you chop David's leg off, Travis dies and you take David instead. When you get back, a fight breaks out about if you should have left them to die or not. Almost kind of like when you first got to the drugstore. Katja offers to fix the man bleeding out, and Lily forces you into the best part of the episode, giving you food and choosing who gets it. 4 pieces of food for 10 people. Also, Clementine's hat is gone for no reason, but anyways, depending on who you choose, people think you're picking favorites, which builds more tension in the group. Katja asks you for help, and when you talk to her, she gets attacked by a walker version of whoever you chose to save. You save her, and then Kenny accuses Ben for the man being bitten. Ben proceeds to say that no matter how you die, you come back as a walker. If the brain is still intact, then you come back no matter what. 2 men, Andy and Danny, walk by, and when you catch them, they say they need gas for their electric fence on their farm. You offer them gas for food and head over to the farm with Mark, Doug, or Carly, and Ben. At the farm, the St. John's Dairy Farm, you need to fix the electric fence because walkers keep screwing with it. Bandits come out of the woods after fixing the fence. They shoot Mark with an arrow and bring up one of the worst sequences of the game. You have to stay behind a moving tractor while a walker crawls after you. If you get too far ahead, you get shot by the bandits. If you stay too close to the walker, you die. It's an annoying process that's upsetting to retry and is almost pure luck. You head back to the farm and everybody is there except Doug/Carly and Ben. Lily remarks that the farm isn't safe, but everyone just kind of ignores it. Danny offers to check out a nearby bandit camp while Danny and Andy's mother fixes Mark inside. When you get to the camp, there's nobody there, and when you look in a tent, you find Clementine's hat and a picture of a mother and a daughter. When you step out of the tent, a crazy lady is pointing a crossbow at you and starts talking about the dairy farm. You can either shoot her or Danny will instead. You head back, give Clementine her hat, experience a really cute scene about a salt lick, and then talk with Kenny about the back barn door. When you open it, you only get about 2 seconds to see what's in there. Andy catches you and takes you to dinner. You decide to make an excuse to wash your hands, which just means snooping around a little bit. You find a Mark with his legs cut off and try to stop everyone from eating Mark. The St. John's were scoping people out in need to use them as a food source. You get knocked out after Andy grabs Clementine. I want to touch on the timeline a little bit. This game takes place in 2003, and Episode 1 takes place in late July. Episode 2 takes place in late October. Episode 3 is 1 week after Episode 2. Episode 4 is a day after Episode 3, and Episode 5 takes place right after Episode 4. If you want, I can make a whole timeline video explaining everything. I used WalkingDeadFandom.com for a lot of my information on this video. They touch a lot more on lore stuff, and I'll link them in the description for you to check out because I find it to be quite interesting. I think now is also a good time to bring up the next time and previously on the Walking Dead things. These games were released in parts, and because the episodes were often months apart, it was a good reminder to bring up what happened or what was going to happen. You wake up in a meat locker with Larry, Lily, Kenny, and Clementine. Larry has a heart attack again, and Kenny gets all paranoid and wants to kill Larry before Larry turns into a walker. This is one of your first major decisions in the game. You choose to either side with Lily or Kenny. I personally choose to go with Lily for this option because it keeps Clementine on her side, and that's all I care about. You open an air vent and escape the locker, choosing to grab a weapon from any type of lethality. You see Danny outside guarding the place, and he talks to Andy about keeping Clementine alive. I think it's obvious why Danny wants Clem, that sick bastard. Anyways, you get into a fight with him and choose to spare him for him to suffer or kill him. I personally choose to spare him. You head to the house to save Katja and talk with Brenda until she gets killed by Walker Mark. Similar thing happens to Andy. You choose if he dies or suffers. You leave the farm and come across a station wagon with supplies. You get the prompt to participate in robbing it or not. The episode ends after seeing a recording of the woman you killed in the woods, recording the motor in. Episode 2 feels so strange to me. I like it, but I also don't like it. There's parts I love, like being so desperate for food that it gets in the way of being cautious, which pays a price, and then the suspicion rising after the woman talking about the dairy farm. There's also parts I don't like. The idea that no one tried to see Mark, or that we don't hear or find out much of the bandits, or that frickin' tractor part. All in all, I give episode 2 a 6 out of 10 for me. Episode 3 starts off 1 week after the events of Episode 2, and you can tell it almost has a complete different tone to it. Episode 2 almost felt depressing, while Episode 3 is almost apocalyptic, seeing how bad the world has gotten. The motor inn's walls are covered in bullet holes and arrows. Everett's pharmacy has a helicopter in it, and everyone is in a crappy mood. Episode 3 starts off by scavenging with Kenny. He talks about leaving the motor inn, and you can tell how Larry's death affected the whole group. You come across a girl screaming in the street with walkers surrounding her. You get the option to buy yourself some time by not killing her, or shooting her but risking yourself and Kenny. I personally choose to leave her, considering the fact that you see her get bit over a dozen times by walkers. While escaping walkers after they pour in, there's a fun thing that shows Kenny saving you or Kenny not saving you. If you chose to side with Kenny for Larry's death, he shoots the walkers. If you side with Lily, you have to get out by yourself. When you get back to the motel, Lily claims that someone is stealing supplies, and you can tell that she's a wreck after her dad's death. Lily wants you to figure out what's going on with the supplies, and when you do, bandits attack and force you to defend the motel. I'll talk about the gameplay later, but for now, here's Doug fixing the RV like he's Bob the frickin' Builder. Also, Duck gets bit and Katja splits her head open. While driving in the RV, Lily accuses Ben of giving the bandits supplies, and she's not wrong because we find out later that Ben really did do it. Doug or Carly defends Ben, which makes Lily angry. Kenny hits a walker on the road, which prompts the group to stop the RV, and while outside, Lily shows truly how unhinged she is. When Kenny deals with the walker, Lily shoots Doug or Carly depending on the version you saved in episode 1. In Doug's version, he saves Ben but ends up being shot. If you saved Carly, Lily just straight up shoots her. You get the option to leave Lily behind or keep her. The RV stops in front of a crashed train. I want to talk about this game's music composed by Jared Emerson Johnson, who did the music for all of the games. I love the music in this game, and there is almost nothing like it. And if I'm not wrong, some of the music is used in The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners as well. Love how this game's music fits with the tone of the game with some light attributes when what you're doing is safe, but when there's danger it completely changes, and all in all, the music is fantastic. Now we're basically at the halfway point of the game, which means things are starting to change. You decide to drive the working train, and while figuring out how to use it, you meet Chuck, a homeless man who sleeps inside of the train. Luckily, Chuck is friendly and offers everyone except you candy, which makes him the worst character of all time. I'm joking, by the way. Chuck is cool. He's a pretty cool guy. You get the train fixed, and also I forgot to add, but if you keep Lily around, she steals the RV. While driving the train, Kenny refuses to stop the train so they can put Duck out of his misery, and you have to get physical with Kenny to make him even stop the train. When you stop the train, Kenny and Katja decide who should go put Duck down. Regardless of what you choose, Kenny and Katja go into the woods first. And now for one of the saddest parts of the game, Katja shoots herself because she can't deal with her son dying, and Duck can't react to what's happening because he's too sick to even realize it. You get the option to shoot Duck or have Kenny do it. Either way, Kenny is forever changed. While on the train, Ben reveals to you that he was offering the bandits supplies. Also, Clement tells you that Chuck said that she'll die the same way that Duck did. When you confront him, he becomes the reason that Clementine survives through everything. He tells you to cut Clementine's hair, teach her how to use a gun, and have a plan on where you're going. You choose to go find her parents in Savannah. You get stopped by a tanker truck blocking the train's way, but you also meet Omid and Chris, a couple who has a kid on the way. They join you in getting the tanker out of the way. You and Clem head into a building where you get attacked by walkers but somehow survive. Walkers start coming at you, but you count the tanker down with a blowtorch, but it removes your way of getting off the bridge, so you have to jump on a moving train. Omid jumps but ends up messing up his leg badly. The episode ends by hearing a stranger from Clementine's radio talking about Clem's parents. All in all, episode 3 is one of my favorites. The progression feels the most smooth here, and it becomes a turning point in this game. At the end of this episode, you're pretty much seeing the final group for this game, which I find pretty cool, as well as the villain for this game. I want to say that in loose terms because there isn't a big bad villain who hates you for everything and will do everything to make sure you suffer type of thing, but I'll talk more about that when the time comes. The shooting the bottles part with Clem is one of my favorites, as well as the Lily descent subplot at the first half of the episode. Overall, episode 3, The Long Road Ahead, is a 9 out of 10 from me. Episode 4 is complete filler in this game, and the whole point is to take you from episode 3 to episode 5. Not much happens compared to episode 3, and it feels really long. It's only about 2 hours and 30 minutes, which is only 30 minutes longer than the rest of the episodes, but it's partially due to the gameplay. The Walking Dead is a point-and-click game with some other elements in it, like quick-time events that keep you at least paying attention to what's happening. Also parts where you're shooting your gun, and there's 2 types of it. The classic theme that goes with the Telltale style, and the bad shooter theme, which has you using a gyroscope-like mechanic to shoot multiple enemies. I find the normal type of style to be where it's at, while I find the other one to be pretty bad, and I wonder why they just didn't pick and choose one and stick with it. Overall, I like the simple gameplay that the game is going for, and it fits with the story type of game, considering that's mostly what you're paying attention to. Begin episode 4 by walking in Savannah, ditching the train for whatever reason. You see someone ringing a church bell, and the stranger on the radio tells you to get out of the streets. Walkers start pouring in the streets, scrambling the group, and then Ben fails to protect Clementine, forcing Chuck to do it. Chuck tells you to move and that he will handle the walkers. You then flee to a yard and try to get into a house that it's connected to. In the yard, you're forced to dig up a dog's grave, which stands out as one of the grossest moments in the game, but you eventually get inside the house to check if it's safe. Ben asks you to check on Kenny up in the attic. Up there you see a terrible sight, a boy who died from starvation. He's practically only bones, and you get the option to put him down or have Kenny do it, but either way you end up burying him. While burying the boy, you see a man staring at you from outside the fence. When you catch him staring, he ends up running away. He wants to go to the waterfront to look for a boat. You and him head there, and when you get there, you see that there are no boats in working condition. You also see
A fate worse than death.
Which is made by Crawford, a community that has zero tolerance for the weak. If you're sick, they kill you. If you're old, they kill you. There are also no children there. A new character you meet tells you about Crawford. Speaking of, you find the person who rings the bells, and after tussling with her, she explains Crawford to you and Kenny. Walkers start appearing and it forces you into the sewers. And this part is pretty much just filler, so I'll key you in on the important details. Find Chuck's body with a bullet in his head. He saved the last bullet for himself, which comes back later in the other games. You meet Vernon and his group in a morgue. They are cancer survivors that escaped Crawford. You get the choice to head back to the house on your own or ask Vernon for help. When you get back to the house, Clementine is missing, Omid is badly injured from his leg, and Kenny is drunk. You eventually find Clem as well as a working boat, which only needs gasoline and a battery. Vernon offers to help Omid, but he needs medicine to do it, so your group makes the decision to sneak into Crawford and get the supplies you need. You go to a school, but when you're about to walk in, you see that Crawford is completely overrun with walkers, and this is where the episode really slows down and starts feeling really, really long. You get into a classroom and make a game plan. You and Molly go for the battery, Kenny and a member of Vernon's group, Bree, go for gasoline, Krista and Vernon go for medicine, and Ben and Clem just end up waiting for you. While at the school, you find out that a woman who was pregnant caused the downfall of Crawford. After helping everyone out with everything, the school gets overrun with walkers, and Clem gets her very first walker kill. Trying to break a door down to the armory, Ben reveals to Kenny that he's the reason Kenny's family is dead. This forever changes Kenny, and he tries to kill Ben right then and there. Also in this whole situation, Bree dies a brutal death by walkers. While escaping the school, Ben gets attacked by walkers, giving you the option to save him or let him die. I personally choose to keep him alive because sure, he screwed up massively, but he made a mistake like how all teenagers do. When you get back to the house, Omid gets fixed up and Vernon offers to take Clem off your hands. He claims that she will die if she stays with the group. Also, Molly leaves and asks you to tell Clem that. Clementine asks you if you and her will have time to find her parents in Crawford. Whichever option you pick, you end up making Clementine cry though. You fall asleep, and when you wake up, Clementine is gone. You find her hat outside, and while snooping around, you get bitten by a walker. You then get the option to reveal the bite to the group, or keep the bite a secret. Then you get to pick who goes with you to get Clementine back, thinking it's Vernon who took Clem. When you reach the morgue, it's abandoned, and you hear Clem on the radio that you have. After you hear a man who isn't Vernon talk to you, and the episode ends there. Episode 4 feels too long and boring, and the only thing I like is the last 10 minutes of it. Everything else is filler, and I feel like they don't use Savannah to its fullest potential. So I'm going to keep my score brief for episode 4 and give episode 4 a 4.5 out of 10. You begin episode 5 by talking to a stranger, and yes, that is actually his name, don't question it. But then walkers start coming into the morgue and you have to find a way out. When you're about to get out of the morgue, you pass out, and if you pick people to go with you, you wake up to them about to cut your arm off, hopefully trying to save you. You then get to choose to keep your arm or lose it, and I personally choose to keep it because I feel like that's what Lee would do. Accepting his fate, knowing he's gonna die, saving Clementine. You climb your way to the roof while seeing some great shots along the way, and when you get to the roof, you have to jump across a bell tower so you can get back to the mansion. When you get back, the boat is gone. Vernon and his group stole it. And if you kept Ben alive, he and Kenny begin to argue, but instead of Kenny primarily having the upper hand, Ben fights back, which makes for an awesome moment. Walkers start flooding in, and you're forced to the attic of the house, where you and Kenny fight, leading you to throwing a thing at the wall, finding a way out. Kenny starts breaking the wall down, leading to you, Omid, and Krista having a heart-to-heart moment that feels very real. When Omid switches into breaking the wall, Kenny and you lament on your screwed-up relationship that you guys have. When you find your way out, you find a pretty sad sight. You see a couple both dead from gunshots. It's obvious what happened. They couldn't deal with the apocalypse, so they killed themselves. Anyways, you find a balcony and hop over to the other roof. If you kept Ben alive, he falls and gets himself impaled on the piece of the balcony. You and Kenny try to help, but Ben draws walkers in by being too loud. Kenny then pushes you away and forces you to keep pushing forward. Kenny, only having one shot in his gun, shoots Ben so he doesn't have to turn, and then you never find out what happens to Kenny. Yes, I know about Season 2, but I want to treat this like a more realistic story for now. If you let Ben die in Episode 4, Kenny disappears, saving Krista. You come across a sign that you have to climb across to reach where Clementine is. The sign breaks and forces you into one of my favorite parts of the game. Sick-ass music starts playing while you fight through hundreds of walkers to reach the Marsh House. If you're curious, I looked up the Marsh House in Savannah, Georgia, and it's called the Marshall House Hotel in Savannah, Georgia. When you get there, you find a station wagon from the end of Episode 2, and while inside the hotel, everything becomes quiet, a big contrast to outside. You then find the room Clementine is in, and there you meet Stranger. Finally face to face with Stranger, he explains how he lost his son, and then after your group took everything in his station wagon, he lost his wife and daughter after they left him. He says that you'll take care of Clem after he kills you. I said earlier that he's a good, almost side villain because there is no villain in The Walking Dead Season 1. Stranger is somebody you've never met until the last 20 minutes of the game, yet he feels developed and his motivations are there. You can tell he's got off the rails, yet he's calm and thinks he means well by what he's doing. While he's talking, Clem attacks him, leading into a brawl between you two, ultimately ending with Clem shooting him. Clem's first human kill of the franchise. You decide to use the classic Walking Dead trope that Lee finds out in a realistic way, and use walker guts to escape with Clementine. While outside in the Horde, you find Clem's parents. This is a great way to add closure to something in an easy way. You have a few second glimpse and then cut to a different scene, which is exactly what happens. Pass out and wake up in a jewelry store. Clem locked you guys in there so you're safe. Lee looks awful here. His eyes are all yellow, his cheeks are sunken in, he's lost all color in his body, and he can barely move. Proceed to tell Clem what to do so she can escape, what sets up for you playing as her in the next game. After helping Clem deal with the walker, you get to tell her advice that sticks with her forever. Your last choice of the game is for her to either leave you or kill you so you can't turn. I personally see this as picking a bad ending or picking the best ending possible, which is obviously having her kill you so you can't turn. Either way, it's sad as hell and had me tearing up on my most recent playthrough. Game ends here, and after the credits you see Clem walking all by herself in a field until she sees two figures in the distance, presumably Omid and Krista, yet Clem looks so terrified for some reason. Episode 5, No Time Left, is sad and miserable in the best kind of way, and I love when a game gets me so invested in a character that you cry when you see them die because it shows how much you care about the game that you're playing. It's mostly due to the voice acting though. It was voiced by Dave Fennoy, who brings so much character to Lee. He's great. Clementine was voiced by Melissa Hutchinson and is amazing for everything she does. All in all, episode 5 for me is a spectacular, amazing 10 out of 10, baby. I think now, after really thinking about it, I can say that this game is my favorite of the series. It's iconic and a fantastic way to start the series. And the one bad thing stems only from gameplay. Points in time, it freezes for a few seconds, which kind of throws you off a little bit, and that's it. The characters are great, and the story keeps you engaged, and the gameplay is pretty good. If you want to play this game now, it's free on Xbox if you have Xbox Live Gold. It's $15 on Steam, and as of now, it's $6 on the PlayStation Store, but it's normally $15. Oh, I'm going to give The Walking Dead Season 1 a fantastic 9.5 out of 10. Also, I forgot to mention 400 Days. It's pretty much just an anthology prequel to Season 2. If you want me to cover it, I will in the next video. Hey, so if you enjoyed, please be sure to subscribe. I'm finally back on track with YouTube stuff after over a year. Also, I stream all the process of these videos on Twitch, so if you want to shoot me a follow there, the link will be in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.